The operating room was silent in a way that felt unnatural, too still, too expectant. Bright surgical lights hung over Evelyn Shore, a 60-year-old retired wildlife rehabilitation officer, her silver hair tucked beneath a blue cap. Only her left cheek, swollen into a tight, unnatural bulge, disrupted the symmetry of her calm, weathered face. Dr. Amelia Grant positioned the scalpel just millimeters above the distended skin. "Stay very still, Evelyn, you're doing great," she whispered, though her voice carried a tremor. Evelyn nodded weakly. Even through sedation, she felt the heaviness inside her face, a pressure she'd grown accustomed to over the last weeks, something that felt less like swelling and more like an unwelcome tenant. A nurse adjusted the monitor. Beeps echoed across the sterile room. Then it happened. The swollen cheek shifted. Not pulsed. Not twitched. Shifted smoothly, deliberately away from the blade. Dr. Grant froze midair. The nurses leaned in, eyes widening. Something inside Evelyn's cheek had just moved, as if it sensed the scalpel approaching. Evelyn felt it too. A cold wave crawled down her spine, her fingers clutching the edges of the surgical table. What was that?" she whispered, panic leaking through her sedation. Dr. Grant swallowed hard. "That's what we're here to find out." 2 weeks before the operating room, life for Evelyn Shore had been quiet. Almost too quiet for a woman who'd spent 40 years rescuing injured owls, foxes, and terrified stray animals across rural Colorado. Retirement hadn't softened her hands or her instincts. She still woke before sunrise, brewed strong coffee, and walked the wooded trail behind her small cabin every morning. That was when she first noticed it, a faint tenderness on her left cheek, like the ghost of a bruise she didn't remember earning. She pressed her fingertips to the area and winced. A small bump, no bigger than a pea, sat just below her cheekbone. "Probably from hauling firewood," she muttered to herself, brushing it off as the kind of minor injury that comes with age and a stubborn refusal to slow down. By afternoon, she'd forgotten about it entirely. She fed the jays on her porch, organized wildlife reports she still volunteered to help with, and chatted with her neighbor Marlene, who always lingered a little too long. But when Evelyn washed her face that night, the bathroom mirror caught her off guard. The bump was more visible, rounder, swollen, stretching her skin subtly outward. She frowned, running her thumb across it. "Strange," she whispered. It wasn't painful, just present. A small, quiet warning she chose not to hear. Over the next few days, the bump on Evelyn's left cheek transformed from a harmless curiosity into an unwelcome companion. It no longer felt like a tiny bruise. It had become firm, almost rubbery beneath her fingertips, with a faint warmth radiating outward. Every morning, as she splashed cold water on her face, she caught herself pausing in front of the mirror, studying it with growing unease. What bothered her most wasn't the swelling. It was the way it seemed to shape-shift subtly throughout the day. Rounder in the morning, slightly elongated at night, as if it were adjusting. But Evelyn was not someone who gave in to fear easily. After decades of steady hands and quick thinking in the field, she had learned that panic clouded judgment. So she ignored it, hiding the swelling under the brim of her hat when she went out to run errands. Still, people noticed. At the local general store, Marlene's husband squinted at her. "You all right, Evelyn? Your face looks a little puffy." "Age catches up to all of us," she replied casually, waving it off. But the truth pressed heavier on her than she admitted. By the 4th day, chewing became slightly uncomfortable. A dull ache pulsed through her cheek whenever she smiled. She found herself avoiding calls with her daughter, afraid the video screen would reveal something she didn't have words for yet. That evening, as she sat by the fireplace reading, a small throb rippled beneath the skin, quick and sharp, like something tapping from the inside. She froze. Her breath hitched. That wasn't normal. But she still wasn't ready to face what it meant. By the end of the week, the dull tapping inside Evelyn's cheek had become an unwelcome rhythm. Not constant, just frequent enough to make her pause mid-sentence or stiffen while stirring soup. Finally, after one particularly sharp pulse sent heat racing across her face, she grabbed her coat and drove herself to Cotton Ridge Community Clinic, a small, outdated building that smelled of antiseptic and winter air. Dr. Leonard Briggs, the town's only general practitioner, greeted her with his usual calm smile. He'd treated her sprains, scratches, and the occasional bite from animals she'd rescued over the years. "What brings you in, Evelyn? Haven't seen you for anything serious in ages." She pointed to her cheek. "This whatever it is, it's not going away." He examined the swelling, pressing gently along her cheekbone. Warm to the touch. Firm. He stepped back, nodding with the confidence of someone who diagnosed the same thing 100 times. "Looks like a simple abscess," he said. "Probably a clogged sebaceous gland. Nothing dangerous." Evelyn tried to steady her breathing. "It feels strange, like pressure, and sometimes a little movement." Dr. Briggs chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Abscesses can feel weird. Don't worry, you're just hyper-aware of it." He scribbled on his pad and handed her antibiotics. "Take these for a week. Warm compresses twice daily. It'll settle." Evelyn forced a smile, but doubt curled in her stomach. As she walked out into the crisp air, she pressed a hand to her cheek. The bump felt unchanged, heavy, present, and as she opened her car door, a faint twitch rippled beneath her skin, as if mocking the diagnosis. 3 days into the antibiotics, nothing had improved. If anything, the swelling on Evelyn's left cheek looked more pronounced, its edges too defined, too intentional, like something nestled beneath the skin had begun claiming space. Night was the worst. During the day, she could distract herself with chores, organizing old wildlife case files, or tending to the rescued owls she still volunteered to feed. But when the house settled into darkness and the wind brushed against her cabin's old wooden siding, silence magnified everything, especially the movement. It began subtly, a faint internal glide, like a small bubble shifting beneath the surface. Evelyn would press her fingers to her cheek, hold her breath, and wait. Sometimes nothing happened. Other times it responded. One night, just after midnight, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to ignore the creeping sensation. Then it happened again, a slow, deliberate slither from the center of her cheek toward her jawline. Her heartbeat thundered. She sat upright, clutching her pillow. No, that's impossible. But the movement didn't stop. It pushed back when she pressed against the swelling, recoiling just slightly, then settling deeper, as if irritated by her touch. Her stomach twisted with fear she refused to name. Desperate for normalcy, she stood and splashed cold water on her face in the bathroom. The mirror offered no comfort. The redness was darker, the bulge more defined, pulling her skin unnaturally tight. A sickening truth hovered in her mind. Abscesses don't move. And definitely not like that. By the next morning, Evelyn's nerves were frayed. Each small sound, her kettle clicking, the floorboards settling, the wind brushing the window, felt like an echo of the movement inside her cheek. She avoided touching it now. Every time she did, the thing beneath the skin seemed to shift, as if it disliked being disturbed. She tried to go about her day, forcing routine into the chaos spiraling inside her. She fed the sheltered owls at the rescue center, cleaned their enclosures, and even joked with a volunteer. But when one of the birds let out a sudden screech, Evelyn flinched so violently she nearly dropped the tray. "You okay?" the volunteer asked. "Just tired," Evelyn said quickly, pulling her scarf higher over her face. By evening, eating had become a challenge. Each bite caused a deep, radiating ache along her cheekbone, and sometimes the pain shot upward near her eye. She moved slowly, fearfully, as if the wrong motion might awaken whatever lurked inside. That night, while sitting alone near the fireplace, she felt another shift, longer, smoother, unmistakable. And then a pulse. A rhythmic, foreign pulse that did not match her heartbeat. Terror washed over her. "No, please don't," she whispered, pressing her palm to her cheek. The object writhed away, retreating subtly toward the upper cheek, as though seeking shelter from her touch. Her breath hitched, eyes filling with tears. She wasn't imagining it. She wasn't being dramatic. Something alive, or aware, was embedded beneath her skin. And now it was growing bolder. The next morning, Evelyn could no longer pretend she was dealing with something simple. The movement, the pulses, the tightening of her cheek, none of it aligned with Dr. Briggs' calm explanation. So she drove herself to Northwood Medical Center, a larger facility 40 miles away, gripping the steering wheel the entire ride as if she were holding herself together by force. Dr. Camila Reyes, a maxillofacial specialist with sharp eyes and a steady demeanor, examined her with far more seriousness than the rural clinic had offered. She listened without interruption as Evelyn described every unsettling detail. "You felt it move?" Dr. Reyes asked quietly. "Yes. More than once," Evelyn whispered. The doctor didn't laugh, didn't dismiss her. Instead, she ordered an immediate ultrasound. Evelyn lay back as the cold gel touched her cheek. Dr. Reyes guided the probe gently, her brow tightening as the screen flickered with grainy images. Evelyn stared upward, afraid to look. Then Dr. Reyes froze. "Hold still," she murmured, her voice suddenly taut. Against her instincts, Evelyn turned her head, just enough to glimpse the monitor. At first, she saw only shadows and white static. Then something unmistakable pulsed, an elongated, oval-shaped density lodged deep beneath her cheekbone. And it moved. Not randomly, not weakly, but with intention, like it sensed the pressure of the probe above it. Evelyn's stomach dropped. What is that? Dr. Reyes inhaled slowly, choosing her words with care. I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's not a typical abscess. For the first time since this nightmare began, Evelyn felt seen, and truly terrified. When Evelyn stepped out of the examination room, her legs trembled beneath her. She sank into one of the hospital's vinyl chairs, dialing the number of the one person she trusted most, her daughter, Lauren. Mom, everything okay? Lauren sounded distracted, likely at work. Evelyn hesitated. Sweetheart, they found something in my cheek. Something that's moving. There was a long pause. Too long. Moving? Mom, are you sure? Maybe it's just swelling or fluid shifting. Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut. I saw it on the ultrasound. Lauren exhaled, the kind of sigh that carried both worry and disbelief. Mom, you've always been sensitive about medical stuff. You're probably overthinking it. The words cut deeper than Evelyn expected. She'd spent her entire life being strong, steady, the one who solved problems, not imagined them. But now, when she finally needed someone to believe her, her daughter's doubt pressed like a weight on her chest. I'm not making this up, Evelyn whispered. Okay, Lauren said, softening. I'm just overwhelmed. Let me call you later tonight. But the call never came. That evening, Evelyn returned home feeling more alone than she had in years. Even her neighbor Marlene, who often stopped by unannounced, kept her distance after one glance at the swelling. Maybe you should stay inside until it settles, Marlene murmured, stepping back as though the condition were contagious. The isolation wrapped around Evelyn like a tightening rope. It wasn't just the thing inside her cheek she feared anymore. It was the creeping suspicion that she was facing it alone. 2 days later, Evelyn sat once again in Dr. Reyes' office, her nerves wound tight like coiled wire. The specialist had spent hours reviewing the ultrasound images, consulting colleagues, and analyzing every possibility. Now she sat across from Evelyn with a seriousness that made the air feel heavier. I won't sugarcoat this, Dr. Reyes began. Whatever is inside your cheek has characteristics we don't usually see in typical infections or cysts. It's mobile, structured, and appears to be lodged close to a major facial nerve. Evelyn swallowed hard. What does that mean? It means, the doctor continued gently, that surgical removal is the safest option. But there are risks. The word risks echoed in Evelyn's mind like a warning bell. Dr. Reyes pulled up a diagram of the face, pointing to the nerve pathways spreading out like delicate branches. If we're not careful, the operation could affect your ability to smile, raise your eyebrows, or control certain facial muscles. There's a small chance of temporary paralysis, and an even smaller chance of permanent damage. Evelyn's throat tightened. Her face was a map of her life, weathered, lined with years of stories, sorrow, laughter. The idea of losing expression felt like losing part of her humanity. And if we don't operate? She asked softly. Dr. Reyes hesitated. Then it could migrate. Higher into the cheek, toward the eye, possibly deeper. A cold wave washed through Evelyn. She sat perfectly still as the weight of the decision settled over her. Neither choice felt safe, but doing nothing felt far more dangerous. The morning of the surgery arrived faster than Evelyn expected. She barely slept the night before. Every flicker of movement beneath her cheek felt like a reminder of what she was about to face. Still, she signed the consent forms with steady hands. Fear was real, but so was resolve. A nurse guided her into a pre-op room, where thin curtains separated patients preparing for their own battles. Evelyn changed into the gown, folding her clothes carefully, as if maintaining order could steady her breath. When she caught her reflection in the small metal cabinet, she barely recognized the woman staring back, her cheeks swollen high, the skin stretched and shiny. Dr. Reyes entered quietly. Evelyn, we'll do everything with utmost precision. You're in good hands. Evelyn nodded. I trust you. Just get it out. As she was wheeled toward the operating room, the antiseptic smell intensified. The hum of fluorescent lights echoed overhead. Each sound, footsteps, instrument trays, soft chatter, felt distant, as though she were drifting through someone else's story. Inside the OR, the chill hit her immediately. Nurses attached monitors, wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her arm, and placed a warm blanket over her legs. As the anesthesiologist prepared the sedation, Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. Then, right as the sedative began to drift through her veins, she felt it. A single, deliberate slide beneath her cheek, as though the thing inside sensed the approaching threat. Her eyes widened. Dr. Reyes leaned over her. "It's okay, Evelyn. We're starting now." But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lived beneath her skin had just awakened. The operating room settled into a focused hush as the sedation took hold. Evelyn conscious enough to feel pressure, but distant enough that the edges of fear blurred into a strange, floating calm. Her breath fogged slightly beneath the oxygen mask, rising and falling in fragile rhythm. Dr. Reyes stood over her with measured precision, scalpel poised. "Beginning incision," she announced to the team, her voice steady but tight. The blade touched skin. Evelyn didn't feel pain, only a deep, dragging pressure across her cheek. The room held its breath. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then the swelling lurched. A sudden, violent movement surged beneath her cheekbone, pushing outward with such force that one of the nurses gasped. The monitors spiked wildly. Evelyn's eyes snapped open, unfocused but terrified. "It's reacting," Dr. Reyes muttered, stepping back just a fraction. "Hold her steady." Another shift, this one sharper, angrier, pressed viciously against the incision site, distorting the skin from within. Dr. Reyes regained her position, jaw clenched. "We proceed," she said firmly. She widened the incision by a few millimeters. A thin line of pressure released, and something beneath the surface coiled in response, curling away as though trying to escape deeper into the tissue. "Retractors," Dr. Reyes instructed. As the wound opened, a pale shape flashed beneath the surgical lights, smooth, segmented, glistening. The entire room froze. Slowly, with controlled precision, Dr. Reyes grasped the structure with forceps. It resisted, twisting in a sickening, deliberate motion. "Steady, steady," she whispered. And then, with a wet, rubbery snap, the foreign object tore free. The moment it left her cheek, Evelyn felt a cold emptiness rush through her, followed by a relief so profound it nearly broke her. When Evelyn awoke in the dim recovery room, the world felt strangely weightless. The throbbing pressure that had lived inside her cheek for weeks was gone, replaced by a hollow soreness and a lingering echo of fear. She reached up instinctively, fingertips brushing the thick bandage taped across her face. A soft clink drew her eyes to the small table beside her bed. There, sealed in a glass specimen jar, floated the thing that had invaded her life. Pale, segmented, still. Dr. Reyes approached quietly. "We removed it completely. You're safe now." Safe. The word hung in the air like a promise Evelyn wasn't ready to trust. She stared at the jar, at the creature suspended in its solution, and felt a shudder crawl through her chest. It wasn't just the parasite that had been extracted. It was the constant dread, the isolation, the disbelief. Yet somehow she felt emptied, as though she needed to relearn who she was without it. Later that afternoon, Evelyn was escorted to the hospital cafeteria for her first meal. She moved slowly, still adjusting to the strange lightness in her face. As she sat alone with a cup of broth, a gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mind if I join you?" It was Nora Blake, a fellow patient in her early 70s with kind eyes and a walker decorated in bright floral tape. She'd overheard part of Evelyn's case from the nurses and, unlike others, showed no hint of fear or discomfort. "I've had my own battles," Nora said softly. "Sometimes the hardest wounds aren't the ones doctors can see." Evelyn felt something loosen inside her, an uncoiling of the tightness she'd carried for weeks. For the first time, someone wasn't pulling away. Someone was leaning in, and that small kindness felt like oxygen. The next morning, a nurse helped Evelyn remove the bandage. She braced herself, expecting something grotesque, but the mirror revealed a thin, curved scar along her left cheek, no more dramatic than a crescent of pale thread. It tugged slightly when she smiled, a reminder of what had lived beneath her skin. But instead of recoiling, Evelyn leaned closer. This mark wasn't disfigurement. It was evidence, proof she had endured something unthinkable and survived. For weeks, she'd felt inhabited, overtaken by something she couldn't understand. Now, looking at her reflection, she felt reclaimed, whole, present. Outside her window, winter light spilled across the snow-covered pines. She touched the scar gently, as if greeting an old friend. She no longer saw fear in her reflection. She saw resilience, the kind she'd forgotten she still possessed.